All praises are Allah's, Lord of the worlds, and may His peace and blessings be upon our Master, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and his pure immaculate Ahlul Bayt. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. I would first like to offer and express my sincere condolences on the death and martyrdom of Her Eminence, Her Holiness, Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, to all brothers and sisters here. And also, I'd like to thank Al-Hadi for giving me this opportunity to share the next few nights with one another. Inshallah, there's a certain theme that these next few nights will have, and as we progress, the theme will become more and more evident. You may need to be patient for the first and second nights, but things will gradually become open, inshallah. But first, a short introduction before we enter the main discussion. Every science has its own set of principles through which it analyzes certain things and subjects. And sometimes we see that scientists of different sciences, when they are given a certain subject or theme, they define and analyze it according to their own principles. So, just as an example, an architect and an engineer, if they were to see a bridge, they would look at the bridge on a par with their own principles. And so they see the bridge differently. They analyze it differently. In Islam too, Islam isn't one science. There are many sciences within Islam. Islam is multidimensional. You can't just understand a certain given subject through one subject or one science of Islam. If you confine your Islam to one science, you'd be wasting that Islam. Islam is much more deeper than the angle that only one science can offer. And so we have in Islam many sciences. And it's important that we understand things through all these sciences. If all your life you limit your understanding to a given science, you've limited yourself. So for example, in history, they have their own principles to see whether a given event has happened or not. They have their own principles by which they judge something, and it may be based on speculation, strong speculation at times. But they analyze things through historical principles that they have for themselves. The theologians also, they have their own principles. Then the Urafa, they have their principles. For the Urafa, the Gnostics or the mystics, it's very difficult to speak about Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam. It's not easy. For the Urafa, it's difficult. But the Urafa now, they're using their own principles. And with their principles to understand the status of Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, they can't. The historians can speak about Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam with their principles. And actually, it's quite easy for them to do so. And other scientists of other sciences within Islam, those which are mainly occupied with the external and superficial aspect of things, it's easy for them to speak about Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam. And that's okay. Islam is multidimensional. It has all these sciences within it. And it's all haq. But I'm saying you have to appreciate there are differences of how they look at Lady Fatemah. It's all haq though. I'm not saying one of them is batil. But I'm saying it's easy to speak about Lady Fatemah for the historian, because he or she only analyzes, did this happen, did this not happen, and so on and so forth. For the theologian, theology is the whole science of theology, kalam, was based on answering the dilemmas of the time. The purpose behind theology, the purpose behind this institution and this establishment of kalam, the science of theology, wasn't to get people closer to Allah. It was to answer dilemmas. The objective of the historian wasn't to get people closer to Allah. The purpose of the historian is for history to be substantiated, for them to give their account. They can never be 100%, it's not revelation. But they, with their principles, they can say this is more probable than this, for example. But many sciences, the objective behind, they're all haq. But some of them, they differ in their objectives. In history, the objective isn't for you to get to Allah, though. In Irfan, though, yes. The objective in Irfan, that alayhaa-salaam, save that they worship me. Imam Sadiq alayhaa-salaam defined liya'budun as liya'rifun. Liya'rifun. Save, I've created the jinn and mankind, save that, the objective, save that they have irfan in relation to me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Knowing Allah, that's different now. The principles differ, the objectives of the Arif differ. However, when the Arif wants to speak about Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, it's difficult. And when you look at their works, they always say we are qasir, we're deficient. We can't do this. Not that they can't speak at all, but through their eyes and angle and their principles, it's difficult for them. The historian, though, they can speak about Lady Fatemah without any problem. But the problem is, with history, with theology, and many other sciences, when they only, as a result of the nature of these sciences, when they only consider the superficial aspect of things, the dhahir of things, and they don't attend to the butun and the inner dimensions of things, the problem is that these sciences lead to difficulties and confusions and question marks. For example, for the historian, when they speak about Lady Fatemah, then the issue is, was she 18 years of age? Was she 23 years of age? There are differences now. When she was martyred, did she die at 18? Some historians believe that, or at 23. And no one can say for 100% when she was martyred. But that's because of the nature of history, the science. It's not why. If it was why, it's 100%. It's Allah's word. But history is man's word. That's okay. But the thing is, with man's word, it's still based on speculation. But it's possible to prove something 100% too. But the evidence usually isn't there. So suddenly they have questioned, they speak about the age of martyrdom. And then these differences arise. Was she 18 or was she 23? The differences arise because of the nature of this science. A science that is based only on the superficial aspect of things. And it's not a bad thing. The science is there. It's part of Islam. But they only look at the stories, the accounts, and they come with, it may be 18, it may be 23, it may be this, it may be that. That's their work. That's how they work. the Urafah, though, when it comes to the age, it doesn't matter whether she was 18 or 23. And then they, through revelation, that's the verses of the Holy Quran, through the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, they want to go a bit deeper and say, look, the age of the Ma'soom and how their growth and how they age is different to how we grow and develop. For example, they say we have traditions. These traditions apply in relation to Nabi Ibrahim, Lady Maryam alayhaa-salaam, Nabi Yahya alayhi-salaam, and others, even to our Holy Messenger, whereby a week's growth for them was on a par with a month's growth of the average person. Or a day's growth was on a par with a week's growth. And they go into that. I'm not saying all their life, every single day was like a week's growth. But they go into that inner dimension of why they were to grow like this. Why did they have to mature and develop like that? It's not important whether it was 18 or 23. This is the reason why it may confuse many people at what age she was martyred. Because the age and the development, the rate of it differs. Or for example, the historian says, was Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam the only child, or did she have brothers and sisters? It's something which they ask in history. It's a good question. And then some of them say that Lady Khadija married before marrying our Holy Prophet. And some say with children from the previous marriages, they were incorporated in the new family. But they only had Lady Fatemah. Others speak differently. That's what history is. None of these different theories of whether Lady Fatemah was alayhaa-salaam, whether she had brothers or sisters, none of it is 100% according to the historian. And that's why we have so many different views there. And these different views emanate from the principles of history, in the science of history that they use. And therefore it's speculation. But some speculations are stronger than others. But when it comes to the Urafah again, they say no. No, it's impossible. Impossible, they say. Now they're using their own principles. Principles that were extracted from revelation, from traditions from the Ahlul Bayt, from du'as and adiyah from the Ahlul Bayt. They extract principles, and with those principles they say no. Lady Khadija, she didn't marry before. It's impossible. No. That womb, that uterus, which gave birth to Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, wasn't the uterus of someone who had 2 or 1 previous marriage. It doesn't work like that. Even in relation to the age of Lady Khadija, the common consensus is 40, but there are many scholars who believe she was 28. That's the difference within history. We have it. We have different historians. They use the principles, they look at the evidences. It's natural. It's something natural within this science. But they say no. We don't accept that Lady Khadija married before. Whatever you want to tell us. Because they can't give them, 100% proof. If they were to give 100% proof, okay. But it's not revelation. It's not as if there's only one account in all these historical accounts. It's not as if there's only one account that she was 40 at the time of marriage and she had 2 previous marriages before that. No, there are other accounts. But the Urafah then use their own principles to justify this particular account that she didn't marry before marrying the Holy Prophet. Their principles, it differs. Now, maybe we can speak more about this in the third or fourth session. It's not something I want to mention here. But the concept of the pure womb that the Urafa get from the supplications of the Ahlul Bayt is an important concept. Another proof, or not proof, but another buttressing factor they use is that, look, how can we accept that she had 2 previous marriages when she at that time in the Arabian Peninsula, when the woman, the status of the woman was almost on a par with animals, very low status. And then someone like Lady Khadija, how can we accept she had 2 previous marriages when history reports and everyone accepts that every suitor amongst the aristocracy of the Arabian Peninsula who had asked for her hand, she had rejected. Why did she reject? And then when Abu Talib, the uncle of the Holy Prophet, came and introducing the Holy Prophet, who had nothing, she accepted. But she had always rejected everyone who had came amongst the aristocracy. It wasn't even thought of a woman to reject, and then such people, because of that very low status they had at that time. It's unimaginable. Then when you see she's always rejecting and then accepts, it shows that her decision was based on ma'rifah. There was some kind of inspiration that made her accept the Holy Messenger. So when we see all this, then when they speak of 2 previous marriages, that becomes unlikely. And also the principle of the pure womb, it's important. The pure womb, it's an Irfani principle. I have spoken about it before, but we may speak about it in the third or fourth. It takes some time. And even the birth of Lady Fatemah, the 40 days preceding conception, it's an important period of time. Many things happened there. They were isolated from even seeing certain people, thinking of certain people. That this idea of the pure womb is a legitimate one, and therefore 2 previous marriages is incompatible with the production and formation of a celestial entity like Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, but we'll speak more about that later. Then we come to Her Holiness's names. Now this is very important for the Urafa. Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam had many names, titles given to her. This is something which the Urafa, as a result of the nature of the science of Irfan, they pay a lot of attention to these names. They don't look at these just as external, superficial titles. These names are important. The reason why they're important, as I'm going to explain more in this lecture, is because be you a man or a woman, with every name that Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam has, you can incorporate that within yourself. And therefore the Urafa, when it comes to names, it's important for them. They now want to provide protocols of how you can acquire that attribute, that certain name within yourself. And that's why she is a model, an example for everyone, a role model. if you say, my role model is X woman because she works and has a child and does this and does that, no, that's nothing to do with Islam. That's a capitalist or a secular worldview that has imprisoned your nafs, your soul. It's okay. Your role model is X woman because maybe she's a prime minister, at the same time she has children and this and that. That's a secular worldview. And if you do that, you're just imprisoning your soul, and it's nothing to do with Islam either. That's not the kind of role models we're looking for. That may have some dunya, worldly benefits, and that may be of importance to you, especially if you're imprisoned by the dunya. But Islam has a much higher importance attached to these names. It looks at it in a totally different way. So, these people, namely Lady Fatemah, alayhaa-salaam, they are examples or exemplars, models for everyone to follow, be you man or woman. And these names that are given, be you a man or a woman, you can follow and incorporate them. And here the Urafa explain how. Now, before we go into those names, just one or two small introductory points again. Just want to make sure everyone is on the same wavelength before we actually go into those names. Here, two questions arise. This concept of being an example, a model, the Arabic is uswa. Okay, so there's uswatun hasana in the Holy Quran in relation to many prophets, and I'll mention the verses in a minute. The question is, can women also be uswa? That's one question which has to be answered. Because if you're an uswa, an example, it's for all humankind. Can women also be an uswa, an example? And also, can non-prophets be an uswa? Or even non-ma'sumeen, can they become uswa? These are two important issues here that I want to answer, and then we come to the names, because it's related. First, chapter 33, verse 21. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Verily, in the Messenger of Allah, there is for you a good example. That's in relation to the Holy Messenger. All his actions, his deeds, the way he behaved, he should be our prime example, and we follow him dot to dot. That's the aim. No one is 100%. But in chapter 60, verses 4 to 6, it reads, قَدْ كَانَتْ لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ. Also, there's an example for you, a good example for you, with Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. So, the Prophet here is an example. And also, those with Nabi Ibrahim, they are also an example for you. Uswa. And then it ends with لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِيهِمْ. Verily for you, in these people, فِيهِمْ, him being plural pronoun. Who is it referring to? وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, those who are with Prophet Ibrahim. So even in relation to those who are with Prophet Ibrahim, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِيهِمْ, there is for you أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Even they, and they're not prophets, they were with the Prophet. They can be an uswa, an example, a model for you. لَمَنْ يَرْجُ اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. Okay, they are an uswa, a good example. Who? Those who are with Ibrahim alayhaa-salaam. They're not prophets, but they can be a good model for you. Now, who can they be a good model for? For me and you. However, me and you may not fit the criterion. It gives the criterion in the Quran. لَمَنْ يَرْجُ اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. Or وَالْيَوْمَ, yes. Those who have raja before Allah, they have hope, they look forward to Allah and the last day. That's the criterion. If you fit this criterion, these people, prophets and those who are with prophets, they can be an uswa for you. If you don't fit the criterion, even if you believe them to be prophets, it won't benefit you. Their existence won't benefit you as an uswa. Why? Because you're not ready. You don't have the necessary qualifications. What were those qualifications? There were two things. Not the mere belief in Allah, not mere tawheed, not the mere belief in resurrection, not mere resurrection, ma'ad, but there has to be a raja, a certain looking forward to, a hope, a certain taste within, a spiritual taste that you should be having in relation to tawheed and ma'ad. This is more than academic tawheed and academic ma'ad. There has to be something within. There has to be a certain raja, and that's difficult. Why? Because how have you learned tawheed? How have you learned ma'ad? How is your tawheed? Is your tawheed like those who say there's a sun, a moon, planets, skies, earth, animals, and then also, in addition to all this, there's an Allah who's governing all this? Is that the tawheed that you have? That's one form of academic tawheed. It's called numerical tawheed, where there's Allah, but secondary to Allah, different to Allah, we have a sun, we have a moon, and all these things, and Allah just governing. You've made things secondary to Allah. It's called numerical tawheed. The taste that that kind of tawheed will cause within is limited. We believe that Allah huwa al-awwalu wal-akhiru wal-dhahiru wal-batin. He's the first, the last, the outer, the inner. Nothing is separate from Allah. Alayhaa-salaam, that's its meaning. There's nothing which is Allah free. Now you believe in the sun, moon, this and this. And then also now there's Allah who's governing all this. As if once upon a time there's Allah and nothing else. And then out of nothing, Allah created the sun and the moon. Out of nothing. Now, many philosophers accept that. The Urafo don't. Many philosophers don't. But the problem with it is this. I'm not saying one form of Tawheed is batil, don't panic. But I'm saying there are different ways of understanding Tawheed. Some are more perfect than others. It affects your worldview, how you see Tawheed. If there's only Allah once upon a time, there's only Allah and nothing else. If you want to believe that. And then Allah, from nothingness, created the sun, the moon. That's an example of numerical Tawheed. Because the creation of the sun and the moon was outside Allah. It's secondary to Allah. Nothing can be secondary to Allah. It's all Him. وَالْأَوَّلُ وَالْآخِرُ وَالظَّاهِرُ وَالْبَاطِنُ. And the problem is there's no such thing as nothingness. Nothingness doesn't exist. That's the second problem with this numerical Tawheed. See, Tawheed is important here. If you believe that there is something called the nothingness, you have to be careful it doesn't affect your understanding of As-Samad. Also in Ma'ad, resurrection, there are different understandings of it. They're all right, don't get me wrong. Just because you have one understanding, it may be less perfect than others. But I'm not saying your understanding is wrong. Some people see Ma'ad, resurrection, as arbitrary, as conventional. Some see it, no, as real and natural. Now what do I mean by that? Do you know if you speed along the motorway and a policeman comes and gives a fine, let's say £20 or krones or whatever. Here, the penalty of £20 is unrelated to speeding. These two are unrelated to one another. It's arbitrary. This penalty of £20 is called arbitrary. It's man-made. It's conventional. But if you put your hand in fire and the hand burns, that penalty of burning is related to you putting your hand in it. No, there's a real natural relationship here. Now, resurrection, Ma'ad, do we believe it's of the conventional type, where people may sin, and at the end they come to a place and there's a red monster there, and they whip them and they burn them? Or do we believe that your sins that you do, you're burning at that very time? As you sin, you're burning right now. And you're creating your hell right now as you sin. See, two different understandings here. They're both right, but one is more perfect than the other. One will view Allah in a different way than to the other. In the conventional form of resurrection, Ma'ad, let's say someone sinned, now they go and they see a red monster who's beating them in hell. They say, why are you burning me? They say, because you sinned. They say, but what was my sin? Well, you didn't pray to Allah. You didn't obey Allah's commands. And therefore we have to do this to you. Now the question is, does Allah need people's worship? Does Allah really burn someone because they didn't pray to Allah? If you say yes, Allah burned someone because they didn't pray, you're limiting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the person who is being burnt by the red monster says, but why are you burning me? He says, well, you did some good deeds too. We're burning, and then when all your sins are eliminated and your punishment has been given, then you can go to heaven. In this conventional type of resurrection, the person can say, well, I don't want to go to heaven, just stop burning me. What are you going to say then? It has problems, this conventional type. However, with the real, natural, takweeni type of punishment, your sins are burning you. Your actions are burning you. لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. This man has nothing but one's actions. Man, you are your actions. Or another verse in the Holy Quran, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتَامَى ظُلْمًا, those who consume the orphan's property wrongfully, إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا, they're only consuming in their insides fire. Only. As they are sinning, consuming orphans' property wrongfully, right then they're burning in the fire. So why don't they sense it? Because that fire is not physical. But once they die, they'll see everything. explicit in the Holy Quran and many other verses. لَمَنْ يَرْجُ اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. For those who have hope, look forward, there's a taste in relation to Tawheed and resurrection. If you fit this criteria, then those who, not only Nabi Ibrahim, but those with Nabi Ibrahim, they can be an uswa for you. But if you don't fit in the criterion, even the best of the Ma'sumin, you won't benefit from them as an uswa. So you have to work. Then the next issue is we said those who are with Ibrahim. That's something incredible. How can we, or how can anyone be with a prophet? Because if you be with a prophet, you can now be an example for others. How can we? Is it open for us too or not? Here, the traditions have given the codes here. There's one tradition from the Holy Messenger that reads, كُلُّ تَقِيٍّ وَنَقِيٍّ آلِي. Whoever is with taqwa and pure, they are my family, the Holy Prophet said. Now, they are my family. Being my family can be of two types. It can be the familial, genetic type, or it can be the spiritual family. It can't be the familial type, because what are you going to do with the uncles like Abu Lahab? He was mushrik to the very end. So he's not of this kind of family. But me and you, even if we're not related to we can be family of the Holy Prophet. Two important prerequisites: taqi, having taqwa, which has stages for itself, and being pure, naqi. Then you can be with the Prophet. And only then you can be a model. Now this includes many people who weren't genetically related to the Holy Prophet, like Salman. Salmanu minna ahlal bayt. He was one of us, Ahlul Bayt. Not in the genetic sense, the spiritual sense, and this is what matters. Okay. Then the next question is, can a woman be a model? Can a woman be that example, that role model for humankind? Can females be that uswa, or that uswatun hasana for others? Here we go to the Quran again, chapter 66, verses 11 and 12. It starts like this. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. Allah gives the example. An example for who? لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. For those who believe. Now, here the conjugation amanu includes both male and female. If it wanted to only be female, for those who are female believers, it would say lillati amanna. But Allah gives the example of that uswa, that mathala, that example. For those who believe, male or female, who does He give as that example for me and you to take as an example? Imra'ata Fir'aun, the wife of Pharaoh, Asiyah. She's also an uswa. إذ قالت, recall when she said, رَبِّ ابْنِي لِي بَيْتًا, Oh Allah, build a house for me, fil Jannah, in heaven, وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ, and save me from the Pharaoh and his actions, وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ, and save me from the wrongdoing people. But she's used here as an example for those who believe, who fit that criterion that we mentioned before. So women too also can be this uswa. And then it continues in the next verse, وَمَرْيَمَ ابْنَةَ إِمْرَانَ. in conjunction with Asiya, even Lady Maryam, she's an uswa too. But Lady Maryam, her status was higher. It doesn't matter. The status may be different. She's more perfect than Asiya. But the fact that these women, they can be models for us to abide by, true examples. The only female name mentioned by name in the Quran is that of Lady Maryam, because she wasn't married. There are many women mentioned in the Quran, but none of them are mentioned by name. We have to learn from that. You don't mention a female's name, the first name, for example. It's not on a par with irfani etiquette. You're not doing anything haram. But if she's married, you don't mention the first name. If she's not married, it's unproblematic. Even Allah is not ready to mention any other woman by name. But He mentions Lady Maryam, and she wasn't married. So women too, they can be uswa. They can be examples. Then what's the wisdom behind all this? Now we're getting closer. Sorry for this long introduction, but it was important before we get to it. Why can women be examples? Why is that entirely unproblematic? Here, the reasoning that the Urafa give is that because the attributes of perfection that we have, they all pertain to the soul. It's nothing to do with the physical dimension. Although the physical dimension is a manifestation of the I, it's a manifestation of the soul. They're not two separate things, but it's a physical manifestation. It's not immaterial. Attributes of perfection belong to and pertain to the immaterial side, not to the physical side. And if we understand that, we see that the eye of a man and the eye of a woman, even though they're different physically, the eye of these two is not different. The nature is the same. The spirit is the same. The potential is the same. That proximity to Allah is the same. All attributes of perfection are attributed to the I. Being obedient, being a believer, being patient. It's nothing to do with the physical aspect of the body. It's to do with the immaterial aspect. And here, men and women are not different. So even if you're a woman, that I, if you can, with that immaterial essence of you, which you share with the man, if you can acquire those attributes of perfection, you are too a model, an example for all humans. The anatomical constitution of you has nothing to do with those attributes of perfection. So, the sex of male and female, the sex is different. One is male and the sex is female. That's because in this physical world, sex is a function of one's anatomy. Depending on what your anatomy is, you'll be male or female. It all depends on the physical constitution. The I has no sex. That immaterial reality has no sex or gender. Although sex and gender are different. Gender is a function of the physical brain. Sex is a function of the physical anatomy. Either way, the I, the immaterial, the true essence of what we are, that is sexless. It's genderless. Yes, its physical manifestation has sex and gender, but attributes of perfection do not pertain to the physical world. And that's why sex and gender, they apply to this world. In the metaphysical realms of existence, in Barzakh and even beyond Barzakh, in the metaphysical realms, there is no sex as we know it here. Why? Because there is no matter, there is no physical aspect. Whatever is physical is in this realm of existence. All succeeding realms of existence, there's nothing physical about them. And therefore, sex and gender, as we know them in this physical realm, as we know them here, they don't exist there. That's not to say that there'll be no sex or no gender in the hereafter. It's just not that which we're familiar with here. Or even marriage, for example. Marriage, when we marry in this world, there's one man, one woman, and there's a contract read, and they're married. This marriage depends on all these physical parameters. In Barzakh onwards, in the metaphysical realms of existence, there is marriage, but it's not this marriage that we're familiar with here. And therefore, marriage as we know it in the metaphysical realms is a totally different thing. It has no Sharia limitations as we know it here. And in the very immaterial realms of existence, and here it speaks of marriage with, it gives names of personalities in the traditions of the Ma'sumin. Here, don't think that marriage is only how we see marriage here. It has a different meaning. I've spoken about this in our discussion on intercession. It's on YouTube, but it's a lecture in its own for those interested. For now, I'll speak more about this tomorrow in more detail, about the general principle. Things that we know of in this realm, don't think this very principle applies as it does in this realm to other realms of existence. For now, if you just be complacent, content with that, and then we'll continue with this tomorrow. Anyway, so Lady Fatemah, Lady Maryam, Asiya and others, they are uswa for us. They can be and they are, because they had those attributes of perfection. Lady Maryam, Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, they were ma'soom. They had those attributes of perfection. It's nothing to do with their physical side, and therefore they can be uswa. Okay. Now, Imam Khomeini has said in relation to Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam, she was a celestial entity that appeared phenotypically as a human in this realm. She was a celestial entity. Many people may be phenotypically human, they look like a human, but they're animals within. Depending on which sins they've done, their inside is a wolf, it's a predator. They're not true humans. But some people are celestial entities, but they're like a human entity before us. They look like a human, but they're much more than a human. They're even more than angels. Then he said, all the spiritual characteristics of all prophets reside in her. Allahu Akbar. Any form of perfection that any prophet had, Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam had. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. She was a woman. She was a woman who, were she, Imam Khomeini is saying this, were she to be a man, she would have been the substitute of the Holy Messenger. Why? Because she had those attributes of perfection, like the Holy Messenger had. It doesn't matter if you're a man, a physical man, or a woman. It's nothing to do with perfection. It's nothing to do with being an uswa. Having those attributes of perfection is important. Okay, now let's look at the names of Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam. This is why this was all an introduction to this point. So just, people can just absorb it better. This is now of interest. And the Urafa, it's very important for them. They look at the names, they say, look, if a name is given to this uswa, it means me and you can be this name. It's a principle they have. The historian looks at the names in a different way. The The theologian looks at those names in a different way, in a right way. It's nothing wrong. The Urafah look at those names in this way, that me and you can now be and incorporate these names. We have this potential. We just have to understand what these names represent. So be you male or female, you can incorporate these names of Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam. Now in some traditions the Holy Messenger says that Lady Fatemah, she is my heart. It's incredible. The Holy Messenger is saying this. In some traditions he says that she is my spirit. In others the Holy Messenger says she's part of my body. Bada'atun minni, a part of my body. In other traditions we see that every time Lady Fatemah enters the house, he stands up. It's a bit out of the normal here. He stands up when Lady Fatemah enters. The Holy Prophet would always kiss her hands. Whenever Lady Fatemah would enter, the Holy Prophet would stand and say, you sit on my place. You sit in my place. Whenever the Holy Prophet wanted to leave for a battle or something, or had to leave town, she was always the last person that he would bid farewell. And when he would arrive, Lady Fatemah was the first person he would want to see. See, this is normal. This is all about perfection here. It's about celestial entities here. In some traditions, one by Imam Sadiq alayhi-salaam says, if there was no Amirul Mu'mineen from Prophet Adam to the very end, no one would have been the spouse of Lady Fatemah alayhi-salaam. This itself opens a whole new door to marriage. What is marriage? Lady Fatemah wouldn't have married. Why should she want to have a physical marriage when she is married up there in the high realms of existence? Which we haven't talked what that means, but why do we marry? Well, if we get drowned and living in Sweden, living in Europe, living in countries which aren't truly Islamic, yes, it's very easy to get drowned in this secular life and treat marriage as a secular entity. But no, true Islam, no. Why do we marry? Permanent marriage is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't just to satiate our animalistic desires. It's a pity to enter a marriage with that intention, or any other secular dimension. For those kind of things, there are other alternatives. Permanent marriage is to get closer with Allah. Lady Fatemah would never have married. She was very close to Allah. Who can get her closer? Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Why did Lady Maryam never marry? There was no one. They are, in quotes, married with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In quotes, forgive the expression. Their iman is very high. There was no one. Bibi Ma'sooma in Rome. Most of Imam Sadiq and Imam Qasim's daughters didn't marry. There was no one. Yes, the Sharia speaks that if you not marrying will lead you to sin, it becomes wajib. Yes, we have that. But for these people, for these celestial people, that those kind of animalistic things don't arise. No one, only since this Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, she married. Otherwise she wouldn't have married at all. Why should she? There's no need. The philosophy of permanent marriages, it's important to pay attention to. Yes, you may ask her, why did the Holy Messenger marry? Why did he marry? Here, the answer to this is in the lecture I gave on Qurb al-Fara'id. It's very difficult, but in short though, with just one sentence, I don't want you to, because some of you may not listen, it's not online, but here, whatever they did, it was Allah's orders. They did nothing for themselves, the Holy Messenger. He never acted based on his own whims or decisions. He was truly annihilated in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His will was truly annihilated in the will of Allah. So he did whatever Allah wanted. Now, for whatever reason, some of them may be socio-political, some may be for other reasons, for the progression of Islam, he just married for that. Most of his wives were very old women. It wasn't based on anything, it was Allah's will. They don't, not like me and you, who act based on our own will, and we hope that it's Allah is satisfied with it. But they've reached that degree of fana. Their actions are Allah's actions. Their words are Allah's words. So that's different there. That's one issue. So, Lady Fatemah alayhaa-salaam has names, and therefore by default we can acquire those names. If you want to be heart of the Holy Prophet, spirit of the Holy Prophet, the potential is there. Now, there are many names, and you all know them. Some of them like muhaddatha, one who is spoken to, one who is communicated with, meaning one who is spoken to by angels, one who is addressed by angels. We too can be like that. Even the Quran specifically mentions that, and even treats it as an objective that we have that. Many of us may be in contact with angels, but we don't know it. For example, in the morning for Salatul Fajr, you hear a noise. The person beside you they heard nothing. You heard it. You woke up, you saw it's time for Fajr. Your capacity was low. The angel manifested by a sound. Some people wake up, they hear a voice, wake up. That's an angel waking them up. Some people who see the angel, and so on and so forth. Most of us have been in contact with them, but we didn't know it was an angel. Anyway, we can be muhaddatha too, but that's not, I want to open this up. Each of these has a lecture of its own. How can we be muhaddatha? She was, another name, Zahra, luminous. When she was doing ibadat, all realms of existence became enlightened. We have that potential too. Then the Urafas speak and give the protocol of how we have to acquire that. Another name that she had was Tahira. She was pure. Not only pure in the physical sense, in all senses. The Urafas speak about that. These aren't, I'm just mentioning them by name, but I'm not entering none of them yet. But then one of those names, and I'll end here, is Batul. Batul means cut off. Cut off from what? She never had menstruation. Oh, that's something important here. Because how can men be Batul? So here we have to see what this Batul means. It may have a physical meaning, but attributes of perfection are nothing to do, and do not pertain to the physical realm. Batul is an attribute of perfection. It has a meaning in this physical realm, but it has meaning in the metaphysical realms too, and therefore men too can become Batul if they understand what it is. So even attributes like that, the cessation or even the absence of menstruation, it's of value. But why is it of value? That's important. What does it represent? That's important. And inshallah tomorrow we'll continue with these names.